Welcome back to The Price of Business. I am your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. You know, last week, and I spoke at the Second Amendment Foundation's group. I was one of the panelists on media bias, and my message is that, we need to really become disruptors like the leftists come and holding the right accountable in propagating their lies. We should be doing the same thing and promoting our truth. But I was really impressed by one of my fellow panelists who talked about media bias and wanted to have him on the guest to talk a little bit about why there is media bias out there. And delighted to be able to spend some time with Herb Stupp. And Herb is a adjunct professor, a writer, a speaker. You do a lot of presentations all over the country on this important topic. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and give us a little bit of background, and welcome, Herb.
Hey, Kevin. It was great being with you on that panel. Great talking to you now again. I guess the two positions that I've had that people understand most easily is I was a New York City commissioner working for Mayor Giuliani for 8 years, and that also brought me to be with him on September 11th, 2001, to witness horrors really close up here in New York City. And then the other position, I've been a federal official in the Reagan and Bush 41 administrations, but many people don't understand regional administrators. They wonder if your region is, half of Harris County or half of the United States, and so you got to explain that. But the other position I had is I won an Emmy doing editorials for Channel 9 here in New York City in the era when TV stations did editorials, which is earlier in my career, let's just say some decades ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have a very diverse background, and really look forward to hearing you share a little bit today about the problem with media bias, why it takes place, and you laid out some of the reasons out there and the various types of bias. We kind of always think in very one-dimensional terms, because I think our blood pressures get up when we talk about how the media mishandles things so often. But it happens on a lot of different levels, doesn't it?
I think so. There are people who are really zealots, and almost all on the left side of the spectrum. People like Piers Morgan, we were discussing at the panel even. He's somebody who has a different view of the world than you and I have, and so he's going to be looking for ways to just skew things in his direction. Some of the MSNBC hosts would be like that, and people in that are stuck in many news departments around the country, including newspapers and TV and radio. But then there's another group. This might even be a larger group of journalists that includes some people who are lazy. Now I'm not painting with a broad brush here, but some people are lazy. And then other journalists, especially in the world we're in now, in part caused by the Obama economy, in part caused by the way journalism is changing, who just have too much on their plate, and they're rushing to get a story out, and they're influenced by some of their more liberal colleagues, some of those zealots I mentioned that might be in the same organization, or they might just be influenced by cocktail party talk, especially if they're in a big city, which tends to be more liberal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're mutual friends of AIM, Accuracy in Media, AIM.org. And one of the things they also have been involved is in academia, accuracy in academia. Let's face it, the vast majority of colleges and universities are liberal propaganda machines, don't you think?
Yeah, I certainly do. I've seen that up close. Way back, I think I mentioned at that conference, Alan Gottlieb and I go back, I think, farther than any two other people at the conference, to college campuses, and we saw it up close. We were trying to organize college campuses 30, 40 years ago for more conservative causes, and it was tough. You could find conservatives, as you do everywhere, but very tough. One example where academia and journalism blend together, and you wonder about the future of journalism, is, and I'll just relate this story to you. I'm an associate member of the New York Press Club, and there's a journalism conference every year. Actually, there's one coming up, and it's in NYU. But one year, it was, I'd say 6 years ago or something, it was at Columbia School of Journalism, very renowned school, maybe the best-known school of journalism, along with a few others.
Yeah, I'd
Michigan
say that's probably
and Stanford.
Northwestern's huge, yeah.
Yeah, and so I was sitting with a graduate student, and it came out, I'd been a Giuliani commissioner, et cetera, and this graduate student relayed to me how a professor was actually trying to be fair in representing different views in the room, and the different views that are out there in society and even in New York City. And he said, are there any students here who consider themselves conservative or moderately conservative? So, we could turn to you for, your thoughts on how some of these issues are called. Nobody raised their hand in a school at Columbia Graduate School of Journalism. So that was a firsthand account from a student himself. So, a lot of these students, I think, come in and want to be journalists because they want to be crusaders, not true journalists reporting both sides as accurately and as fairly as possible.
Right. They have agendas. They were given those agendas, and it's almost taught like it's a responsibility. In academia, if you're a journalist, you have an agenda, and it seems like it's gone from somewhat hidden to being pretty obvious.
Yeah. And when I was a TV editorialist, TV editorials could be very similar to what you'd see in a newspaper or magazine, the opinion of management. So here's an area of the TV day that's actually supposed to represent opinion, and yet, I would go to great lengths to research both sides, or sometimes there'd be 3 or 4 sides of an issue to present to management and the editorial board, even if we did ultimately come down on a more conservative side. At least we could even express, hey, Commissioner so-and-so says this, however, we think this is the better approach. So here in an area of opinion, I certainly went out of my way to be as objective as possible in considering all views. I'm not sure that all reporters do that today.
No.
Certainly some do. I'm not painting with the broadest brush, but media bias is more than a small problem, as we both know.
Yeah, and it seems like if you're choosing to be conservative, to look at the world from a conservative perspective, you're treated as though it's anti-intellectual, as though conservatism is hostile to being intellectual. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I've seen that. I think that's where some of the more academically oriented organizations can really help us. In the cocktail party circuit or in a press club, if you are, say, pro-life or pro-gun, especially, your state is better than mine on issues like that. But I see on some of the local media, there's no real representation of the pro-gun, pro-Second Amendment viewpoint, or they just dismiss. They mention what the NRA does, with a sneer. They don't even mention the groups that we were with, the Second Amendment Foundation or the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. They view some of these, especially social issues, even more than the economic issues. How could you, or on like an issue like gay marriage, which we have here in New York now, thanks to Governor Cuomo and some legislators, but you don't have there. But if you're not for gay marriage, you're a bigot, even though the president held that view, 2 years ago? He was still against gay marriage, but now you're a bigot.
As did Hillary Clinton, until she all of a sudden makes an announcement after Obama. I mean, all of a sudden, it's really it's become rather transformative, And what's interesting about it is they don't even apologize for their former bigotry.
That's right. That's right. I mean, President Clinton signed the Defense of Marriage Act, right?
Yeah.
So.
Crazy times, crazy stuff. Where do we learn more about you? Obviously, you've got some stuff a lot of places. Second Amendment Foundation. If there's an event that comes through, you speak at a lot of these events around the country. You were here in Houston last week. I think you were just recently at an event in Connecticut. Is that correct?
I was not in Connecticut. I enjoy going there, but I've not been there in the last month or so.
Oh, okay. But you do these all over the country for Second Amendment Foundation.
I certainly go to the Gun Rights Policy Conference each year and selected, events around the country. I'm not, I'm a believer in freedom. I'm a believer in the Second Amendment and the Constitution. I'm actually not a gun enthusiast myself. I'm not averse to that. I'm just kind of busy. And, friends of mine who are gun enthusiasts saying, well, don't get too busy or else it might be the detriment of your family if you ever need to do something in a crime situation.
Yep.
But Anyway,
I've become more interested in guns in recent years because the reality is that all of the Bill of Rights can really depend on our ability to have access to that to those guns in the Second Amendment. And so
you're right.
I've become very fond of that. I've been asked by one of my kids, what if you could only have one or the other, the right to a gun or the right to vote? Well, I'll take a right to a gun any day.
Yeah. Well,
right
apparently the framers of the Constitution, and one of my recent activities was doing a review of Don Devine's book about the Constitution and how we can find our way back to a more limited government, a more constitutional government. I'll send that to you. But the framers pretty much put the Bill of Rights in the order of importance as they saw it. So they saw freedom of press and religion as being very important, and they saw the right to have access to weapons as the next most important right of free people.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's very, very important. Well, listen, my friend, I'm going to get you back on in the future. Thanks for spending time with us. Herb Stupp, he's a writer, he's a speaker. I'm really glad you're on our side, by the way.
Well, same here, Kevin.
All right. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
When we come back, we're going to have much more for you. I do want to remind you the best content here can be found over there at usdailyreview.com. While there, like it on Facebook, follow it on Twitter. Stay tuned for more right after this.